Hey everyone, I spend so much time finding these stories for you. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button. It means the world and help this channel going strong. Let's grow together. Now, let's start the video, the first story. Cutting. Off my abusive dad means losing my mom, I, 24F, have 3 siblings, 21M, 18F, and 15F. Growing up, our dad was verbally and emotionally abusive to all of us. He was also physically abusive to my brother and me on a few occasions. We all had to walk on eggshells around him, and I have developed an anxiety disorder due to always having to be on high alert. We were always confined to the basement, our playroom, or our upstairs bedrooms because my dad wanted to watch TV in silence. He would get incredibly angry over things like us not wanting to finish our dinner or us sleeping in past 8 a.m. He was also very abusive to our mom, yelling at her if she sat down and relaxed, yelling at her if we made noise, yelling at her for spending money on groceries, etc. The worst part is that my dad is a narcissist and is very charming. He was the mayor of our town, and everyone loved him. My friends all eventually witnessed the abuse at one point or another, and they couldn't believe that one of the seemingly nicest people frequently flew off the handle and screamed at his kids. My mom was amazing. She tried everything she could to raise us basically on her own, shield us, appease my dad, and make sure we still had a good childhood. I loved my mom more than anyone, but I always resented her for not leaving him. Now I realize that is easier said than done. She is a victim too. Fast forward to college, the abuse of my mom and siblings continued. I stood up to him and argued with him about it. And after an intense screaming match during my sophomore year of college, I cut him off and didn't talk to him or see him for 6 months. My siblings told me that my parents argued more and my mom cried all of the time. I thought it would be what she needed to finally leave him, but she didn't. I eventually started coming over again and pretending that nothing was wrong because I missed my mom and my siblings. I realize now that my dad is also financially abusing my mom. He keeps all of their money in an account that only he has access to. Her paycheck goes into this account, and she has to ask him for money when she needs it. My paternal grandfather passed away about a decade ago and left my mom about $500,000. My dad spent it all and more and has taken out multiple loans. I have offered many times to help my mom with the divorce and taking back control of the finances, but she's too afraid of being on her own, and she thinks they have too much debt and can't afford a divorce. Fast forward again. I'm married and have a baby. My baby was born early and weighed 5 pounds. Although I would have been protective of him anyway, his low birth weight made my husband and I extra protective. From the very beginning, I cringed every time my dad was near my son. He complained about having to wash his hands. He didn't support my son's head well, and he once fell asleep at the dinner table while holding my son. He also asked my husband and I to hold my son multiple times while he was crying, saying I can console him. My dad didn't take any hints, and it got to the point where I no longer wanted my dad to hold my son. One night, when my son was 2 months old, my siblings, my husband and I, went out to see a movie. My mom babysat. I told her that my dad was not to hold the baby, and she agreed. My dad wasn't home at the time, and he never cared to take care of my siblings and I when we were kids, so I thought it would be fine. When we got back from the movie, my mom and my son were cuddling on the couch. My husband and I quickly went inside, put my sleeping baby in his car seat, and left. My son is now almost 4 months old, and my sister, 18F, broke down and told me that my dad tried holding my son that night and that when my mom wouldn't let him, he screamed at her and called her a damn fucking bitch. She says my parents didn't speak for a week afterwards, and my mom cries all of the time because she has wanted to come forward and tell me, but she feels like she has waited too long. He also complained to my sister that my husband and I know nothing about being parents because it has only been a few months and that we're entitled for setting ground rules such as washing your hands before holding the baby. I only get to see my brother, 21M, when we both come to my parents' house, because we live far away and our parents' house is perfectly in between. I also only get to see my sister, 15F, when I go to my parents' house because she can't legally drive yet, and my mom rarely visits me because my dad gets jealous of our relationship and tries to come, which my mom knows he is not welcome to do. Although I know I will see my mom and my siblings less, I realize now that I need to cut my dad off for good. I am so upset that he yelled in front of my son, and if there was a way for me to press charges for that, I would. He hasn't changed. He is still the abusive jerk he always was, and he doesn't need to be around me or my son. My dilemma is that I don't know how to communicate to any of my family members that I am choosing to cut him off. Once he realizes, I know he will keep my mom and my sister from seeing me. I feel guilty knowing that his anger with me will be taken out on them. Any advice or support you can provide will be greatly appreciated. Now to the second story, my family still loves my ex. It's a long story. Okay, this is a long story, and I'm sorry if it rambles a little bit, but I just want my story heard by more than just my friends because I am so over this whole ordeal. So let's get into it. For background, my ex, now M25 and I, F23, started dating at the end of my junior year in 2018 up until the end of 2022, so about 4.5 years. The first year, we were long distance because we obviously still lived with our parents, but he lived close to Chicago, and I was about 3.5 hours away closer to the Mississippi River. In 2019, after I graduated, he had bought a house 20 minutes away from my hometown, so we moved in together. His parents and I got along pretty well. They were always kind to me and even helped us renovate our kitchen. About a year into living together, I couldn't sleep, so I wrote a cute love note in his notes app that he could find later on, as I did every now and then. After I was done, I noticed he had the Reddit app and decided to scroll through that because I always saw random Reddit posts that I thought were funny and wanted to see how easy it was to use. He had gotten a notification about a message on the app, so I checked it for him. Yes, we had each other's passwords and we trusted each other, so I didn't think anything of it. That's when I discovered he had been talking to other women and flirting with them. I only got to 2 different message threads. There were more, but I couldn't look at them. Before I broke down crying and woke him up to confront him. He started crying and told me it'd never happen again. I believed him and stayed. The next year went by fine until we started to renovate the 2 upstairs bedrooms and the staircase. His mom kept trying to tell us what we should do with it, and I kept telling her that we'll figure it out as we go. My family has a lot of contractors, so while I'm not a genius in renovations, I know more than what a typical 20-year-old at the time would know. One day when they were staying with us, something flipped in her. I can't think of anything I did to provoke her outbreak besides telling her we weren't going to paint the closets, and I can't even really remember what all she said because I just couldn't believe how quickly her attitude towards me had changed. We argued back and forth about nothing. Really, she just finally aired out all of the problems she had with me that were previously unknown to me. She called me rude, disrespectful, and to end it all, she told me to fuck off. Now I will admit I wasn't the nicest to her within the argument, but I had treated her like my own mother during my relationship to her son. After the stupidest argument of my life, I was sent into the biggest panic anxiety attack I've ever had. I was crying uncontrollably, hyperventilating, and shaking. My ex had sat with me for maybe 5 minutes, then ran off to go comfort his mom. Eventually, he came back and told me to call my mom and have her take me to her house, instead of standing up for me to his mom and asking her to leave. His bright idea was to take me out of my safe space, my home, and let his mom stay there instead. I was at my mom's for a couple of hours until he came to pick me up and take me home because she had finally left. That was the moment I lost all respect for him and realized that he would never stand up for me in any situation. After that, his parents pretty much disowned him just because he was still with me. The next year and a half was rough. We turned into roommates that slept together. During the last year, I took a nice long look back at our relationship and slowly realized I wasn't happy. We never went on date nights, he never wanted to go do anything, and whenever we did do something, I felt like he wasn't really present in the moments he was just doing it, so I'd shut up about it. Throughout our relationship, he had the same after-work routine. He'd come home, take the dog out to pee, or leave him in the dog run for a little bit, shower, and then play his video games until it was bedtime. His headphones would be on, and he'd be in his own world for at least 5 to 6 hours playing games. I'd make supper 90% of the time unless I wanted something on the grill. Only then would he cook. I even ended up doing my own social experiment with him because I realized I was the one initiating all physical contact, except sex. For 3 days, I didn't kiss him first, I didn't hug him first, and I didn't say I love you first. In those 3 excruciating long days, we hugged once, initiated by me, and only said I love you once, also initiated by me. He told me from the get-go he wasn't a touchy-feely person, but that is one of my biggest love languages. I had to beg him pretty much to cuddle on the couch or come to bed to cuddle me to sleep. When it comes to opening up to people, I'm not the best at it and get emotional very quickly. So instead of sitting down and talking to him about it, I wrote him 3 different letters, 3 different times. I explained what he was doing and how it made me feel and how he could make it better. I'd even ask him if there's things I needed to work on, and he would always say he couldn't think of anything. All 3 letters went in one ear and out the other. Nothing would change. After the second letter, I threatened to leave and move back in with my mom, but he said he'd changed, and he did. For maybe a week or 2. In October of 2022, he proposed to me in front of my family and the photographer that was taking our family pictures, which I was later told was just a ploy for engagement pictures. I said yes because I thought maybe he's finally got it. While trying to plan the wedding, I'd ask for his input on literally anything, and I'd always be met with, "Yay, sure, it's whatever you want." I felt like he didn't care about our special day and wasn't taking it seriously. I felt like this was just a shut-up ring, so I'd stop dropping hints and he wouldn't have to hear about it anymore. Finally, I got tired of my letters not being taken seriously and feeling like his mother, roommate, so I moved back in with my mom in November of 2022. I will admit, how we broke up is kind of fucked up. I had tried to break up with him 3 different times, and each time he'd convince me to stay and think about it. I did because it hurt me to see him hurt. While I still lived with him, there was a guy at my work who was leaving me not-so-subtle hints that he wanted me. At this point, I had given him the ring back, even though it was my mom's engagement ring, and yes, my parents are divorced, so she hadn't worn it in 10+ years, and told him I was done with the relationship, but I still lived with him. I slept with my coworker, so in my ex's head I cheated, but I'm still on the fence about it because I can see how it would look to him since I still lived with him. Pretty shitty, I know, and I've beat myself up about it for so long. I do. Wish I had waited till I was moved out to start seeing my coworker so there was no doubt in his mind that I was done and wouldn't have hurt him as bad. The 6 months after our breakup were pretty lonely for me. Going to sleep on an air mattress in my sister's old room because my mom turned my old room into my niece's toy room. Sleeping by myself after 3 years of having someone else in bed with me. The hookups I went to just to feel wanted by someone, even if it was just for an hour. Thankfully, I decided I was tired of the hookups and wanted something more serious and found my current boyfriend on Bumble. He's such a sweet, caring, lovable goofball that doesn't mind my ADHD autism quirks and actually enjoys being around me. We clicked instantly and he said, "I love you," after 2 weeks. Now, the reoccurring issue I have is my family, mom's side, still loves my ex. He's still in all family group chats, Facebook groups, and is still invited to all of the family get-togethers. It makes me and my boyfriend so uncomfortable and awkward. My siblings and their significant others all agree with me that he shouldn't still be hanging around almost a year and a half later. My mom had told me, the first time I came to her crying about me wanting to leave him but not knowing what to do, "He'll always be my son," and she has stayed true to that, and even threw him a birthday party the same time as my brothers. Their birthdays are close together, at my grandparents' house. She still calls him Uncle Name when talking about him with my nieces. My brother finally got fed up with another family situation and brought up the situation with my ex still coming around. My mom had told him if my granny, who died long before I was even born, would roll over in her grave if she knew I kicked him out when his family disowned him because of me. Of course, everything is always my fault, even though I didn't do anything but tell his mom we weren't going to paint the closets. She is dead set that he is her son, even though he's my ex. But if my grandma had done the same thing with both of my uncle's ex-wives, he'd throw the biggest hissy fit you'd ever see a grown-ass man throw. Or even if she did it with my dad. I just don't understand why it's only my ex that gets to keep getting the family treatment. Unfortunately, after we broke up, my ex and my uncle became best friends and will also stand up for him no matter what. My best friend that I've had since 5th grade got sick of him coming around and lost it when I told her he had brought his new girlfriend to my grandpa's birthday party. She is in the same boat as me with not knowing why they've kept him around. She texted him a long rant and aired out everything she had wanted to say since we broke up. Nothing that she said was particularly nasty, mainly just pointing out that It's weird how he's still hanging around and how shitty it is to bring your new girlfriend to your ex's grandpa's party. The kicker, he couldn't even stand up for himself. He was either with my uncle or screenshotted the text and sent it to him to read, and my uncle came to his defense. I will add that he, me ex, hadn't had her number saved since he had blocked her on all social media around the time of the first letter I gave him because he thought she was behind a lot of why I wanted to leave, which is not true at all. Sooner or later, him or my uncle told my mom about it, so she sent out a message in a newly created group chat with me, my siblings, and their lovers about. She didn't know his new girl was going to be there. As far as everyone is concerned, he is just as much a part of the family as anyone else, and whoever is texting him, the long rant can stop. I haven't yet, but know I need to sit my mom down and explain exactly how I feel about this whole situation. I had written and printed out a letter for her explaining that I was just going to be done with that side of the family since they want to keep him around so bad. And after my sister's wedding, I'd no longer be a part of the family. But my boyfriend asked me if he could give me his thoughts and opinions on the letter. Of course I said yes, because while it mainly affects me, it does still affect him in a small way. He basically told me I need to sit down with my mom and give her the ultimatum of me or him before I just leave. Because in a few years, if I didn't do everything I could to try and change her mind or see it from my point of view, I might regret it. But if I at least try to talk to her and it boils down to me stepping away from the family, I'll know I've done everything I could before turning to my nuclear option. I agreed with him because I had had a similar thought after rereading my letter. I told my siblings about the letter and let them read it. They all agreed that it's a well-written letter, and while they don't want to see it happen, they don't want me to be miserable and uncomfortable at all of the future family functions. My sister and her future wife didn't invite my ex to their wedding out of respect for me since I don't think they'd want one of the maids of honor to be uncomfortable during their wedding. They just want love and good vibes all day. My brother feels like he's being replaced by my ex since he and my mom do more together than my mom and my brother. My boyfriend feels like my family hasn't even given him a chance since my ex is still around, and no one really talks to either of us at family gatherings. As of me writing this, we've been together for almost a year. My mom even makes a family calendar every year for everyone for Christmas, and left out my boyfriend's birthday but still kept my ex's and still adds his pictures. She even put him on her 2023 Christmas cards. I'm honestly terrified to talk to her about everything, because she has shown me time and time again she wants him there, with no end in sight, and I'm scared that if I give her the ultimatum, she'll choose my ex. Maybe not by directly saying, I choose him, but more of like a, I can't do that to him, and I know she won't because she is stubborn, and I'd have no choice but to choose my own mental health and well-being and have to leave the biggest support system I have because they care more about my ex than me and my feelings. I'm at a standstill right now with talking to my mom because I'm just so nervous and I know I'm either going to get frustrated and furious with her or I'm just going to break down and cry my eyes out while trying to have a discussion with her. This has been going on for almost 2 years, and if I don't talk to her soon, I'm going to go crazy. Thankfully, my boyfriend and I live about an hour away from our hometowns, so I don't have to worry about randomly running into my ex. If you'd like to read my family resignation letter, I can post it in the comments because that too is kind of long and reiterates some of what I put in this post. I'm not necessarily looking for sympathy because I know I fucked up too. I just want to feel heard and maybe given some advice on how to better approach my mom when I finally grow a pair, bite the bullet, and talk to her. I don't know if it would be better to do it one-on-one or have my siblings there with me just for support and maybe add their feelings about the whole situation. I don't want my mom to think we are attacking her, but seeing how this has affected my brother. I think he also needs to be heard because his thoughts and feelings are just as important. If you've made it this far, thank you for taking the time to read my dilemma. I'll update after I finally talk to my mom. But I've got no idea when that will eventually happen. Thanks, guys. Now to the third story, Ida, sister drama. Long story, need help, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm pretty new to Reddit, but I can really use some help with this situation. I don't even know where to begin, but I'm wondering if I'm the a-hole. It's a long one, so I apologize in advance. In 2022, I was able to sell my house in one state, use the equity to buy a house cash in another state. Right before I sold the old house, my ex, who is in no way a love interest for me anymore, we have been split up for over 10 years and in fact he is gay, needed a place to stay because he had lost his job and his apartment. And I felt bad for him and allowed him to move in. A short time later, I sold the house and moved 4 hours north, and since my ex still had nowhere to live, I allowed him to move with me. This was my first experience buying a house cash, as the previous one was done through a conventional mortgage. At the closing, which was in July of 2022, I was told that since they didn't know how paid up the taxes were, that if I were to owe any taxes on it, that I would get written notice with a bill from the town by the end of August, and that if I didn't, that means I didn't owe anything. I was like, okay. And naive to this and took it at face value since with the other house, the taxes were rolled into the mortgage and I never had to worry about any of that. So come August, I never got any notice about owing any taxes whatsoever, so I went on with my life. In the interim, my ex was supposed to be looking for a job and getting his own place, but instead he was laying around doing nothing. I have a business and work from home but was barely scraping by with having to pay for his meds, his food, etc., and plus the utilities here were way higher than anticipated. So I started to get on him to get a job. A little backstory on my ex. He is a narcissist and an ex-meth user, not using ever while we were together, but since we had split, and he found his gay self, he was doing all kinds of very dumb, irresponsible things. And yes, I'm an idiot who felt bad for him and allowed him to move in, but I was unaware of just how bad he had become and how lazy and verbally mean. So I felt stuck at this point. So now I'll move on to the main reason for my post. I know, living with the gay ex who used to do meth and has no job isn't the main reason? Lowell, no, sadly not. I don't need to ask if I'm the asshole in that situation because, yes, I'm an asshole for not kicking his ass out sooner or for ever letting him move back in the first place, but he's the asshole for thinking it was okay to use me. So I'm pretty confident in that situation, but you needed to know the things above for me to move forward. My sister, who lives 5 states away, called me and was telling me how she kicked her narcissistic husband out of the house, and she is getting divorced. Narcissistic husbands run in the family, apparently. And she is an alcoholic, although 12 years sober, it had taken a toll on her liver and her overall health. She is 10 years older than me. We weren't overly close, but out of everyone. In my family, she was the one I was closest with. She was concerned about not being able to live by herself and make it on her own, so I immediately told her she can move in with me. I had plenty of room in the new house. I was happy to be able to help out my sister. She had a daughter that lived with her but was just graduating college, and I was under the impression that this adult daughter would be going on to do her own thing. But then months later, I find out that her daughter, my niece, hadn't seen her more than 4 times in the last 15 years, is now moving in with us too. But supposedly only temporarily, and then she would be moving to Florida with her friends? So, fast forward about 8 months later, once my sister's lease was up, she was getting ready to move in. The only issue was, she was having problems getting everything packed up. So I offered to come there a couple days prior to the official move, outdate from her condo and help. I flew out there just to find out that nothing was packed. My sister seemed so tired and weak that she was useless in helping with much, and her daughter, 26-year-old health adult who had an entire year to prepare for this move and help get things packed up, had done nothing. So for 2 days, I had to pack up an entire 3-bedroom condo on my own, while her daughter packed the rec room and played on her phone. She hired some guys to come pack the truck the day she had to be out, and it was a close call that we even got her out of there in time. I drove the truck with my sister, the 14-hour trip back to my house, and her daughter drove her car. On the drive, I had talked to her about how I was happy she was moving in, and told her that since the house was paid for in cash, that if something were to happen to me, I want her to have the house, and if something were to happen to both of us, I would want to leave the house to her daughter. She said how she was so happy to know she had a nice home, a safe place with family, and that she was also there for me. And we would be a team, and be there for each other as the years go by. And I agreed. Being that she was so much older than me, we never really lived together. Not since I was like 7 years old. She went to college and got married, etc. And I never lived with her as an adult, so it was like moving in with a stranger if you think about it. But all I knew was, I was happy to be there for my sister. So before they moved in, my ex had gotten a job about 6 months prior, so finally he was making money. Knowing him, the only reason he got that job was because he knew my sister was moving in soon, and he likes to keep up appearances as being Mr. Responsibility, so I can look like a liar if I had told my sister he was lazy and jobless. Typical narcissist stuff. My sister's portion of paying rent in the house was to pay the utilities, which is all I asked because that is what would help me out most right now. She is getting almost $4,000 per month alimony from her ex, who makes close to $130,000 per year, and the utilities are about $1,200 per month. So, soon after my sister moves in, about 6 months in, she winds up in the hospital because she decided to over-medicate herself on benzos, which caused her to have seizures and land her in the hospital for a month to where she almost died. Apparently, her addiction issues were not just about alcohol, and every time she goes to the DRs, I always hear her say she hasn't had any addiction issues in over 12 years. I guess she doesn't count the pills? But thankfully, she made it through all that talked about how grateful she was to have me in her life, so she doesn't have to grow old alone. She is 60 years old, BTW. But things at home were not great because her and her daughter are constantly fighting, and my sister will immediately call me to get in the middle of these fights, which I did not want to do and hardly ever would do. And in turn, my sister would give me the cold shoulder for a day or so. I did, however, get in the middle if ever my niece was being disrespectful or mean, and I had more than one talk with her about her selfish behaviors. It was so odd how self-centered my niece was. I just wasn't expecting that from her when she moved in. I know my sister grew up having everything handed to her. She was the only one who went to college, and my parents made a big stink about it and paid for her entire 5 years of college, and then paid for her elaborate wedding with 200 guests, and even bought her a brand new car as a wedding gift. And no, me saying that doesn't come from jealousy of my sister because I was literally 13 at the time she got married, so I thought nothing of it. But my parents had no interest in paying for my college, wedding, etc., mostly because they had pissed all their money away in Atlantic City by the time I was ready to graduate HS. So I knew the problem there wasn't my sister, but with my parents. Dysfunctional in the dictionary has a family photo of us in it. So, when my sister would be fighting with her daughter, she knew that I was not afraid to speak my mind, so she assumed I would do all her dirty work for her. She assumed I would be the bad guy so she wouldn't have to be. But no, sorry, I wasn't going to come in and try and help raise her adult daughter by putting my foot down on someone who is 26 years old and shouldn't be acting this way to begin with. Besides, I hardly know this kid. She may be my niece, but due to my sister's inability to keep up with family relationships over the years, likely stemming from her hidden alcohol abuse, I wasn't given the chance to get to know her. And believe me, I tried. But her ex was a real dick who thought he could fool everyone into believing he was such a nice guy, when all he was a narcissistic ass munch. I never liked him from day one. So my sister whined about her daughter constantly, and me being someone who runs as far away from drama as possible, I mean, I live so very far from my whole family for a reason. I couldn't stand the constant fighting in the house. It was bad enough that having my lazy ex there was causing fighting in the house. So my sister wanted me to ask my niece to leave, give her like 90 days notice. Of course, make me do my sister's dirty work. But this time, my sister is using the fact that she just got over being in the hospital and can't take all of this. Fighting, blah, blah. So I did it. I told my niece she had 90 days to find another place to live. Long story short, haha, too late. She moved out and in with her boyfriend 800 miles away. But months before that even happened, I had gotten my tax bill for the year. So I take the cash down to the tax office to pay it, and it's there that I'm told that I owe not just this year's, but I also owe last year's taxes. You know, the ones where I was explicitly told I would get a bill for last year in August if I owed anything. Yeah, I never got a bill. Turns out, because the previous owner of this house used to rent it out a lot, he had all the important documents, char's bill, come to him at his other residence, which means that he got the tax bill last year and just decided it wasn't important enough to forward it to me. He is an asshole. Even in dealing with him and his realtor when buying this house, I got to find out just what kind of asshole he was. Yelling at his realtors all the time, refusing to fix things when he rented the place out. A real fuckface kind of guy. So I was standing there at the tax office just bawling because how stupid am I? I felt so incredibly embarrassed and overwhelmed and just divested. And they wouldn't let me pay for the 1 year. Oh, no. Now they wanted both years together. I even found out there was a tax sale on my house that I had no idea happened. But I was also told that it sounds worse than it is, and I still have plenty of time to try and get this resolved. So now I had to come up with almost $9,000. And I had to come up with this money prior to 6 months, or then I would owe almost $14,000 because another year's taxes would be added on. What a mess. On top of it, my car died. The only car we had in the house. So we had to buy a car. Ugh. I knew having the $9,000 in 6 months would never work, but I knew it was more possible to have the full 3 years, which is around $14,000, would be maybe doable if we all, myself, my ex, and my sister, all saved up each month. Over the course of more than 12 months time frame. When this was brought up to my sister, she kind of acted like it was not her problem. Which, no, technically it wasn't since I did live in the house almost a year before she moved in. I never asked her for any help. I just told her what was happening and she just acted like she couldn't afford to help out. I thought that was a bit strange considering how much money she had coming in, but I let it go because I had other issues I was dealing with. So my sister's health is way better now than it had been. Her liver function is way better, and she is acting much more like a normal, healthy person, not sleeping all the time and able to do pretty much anything she wants, which includes smoking a lot of pot. But hey, it's better than her popping pills or drinking, I guess. The issue now, though, is my ex, who I haven't emphasized enough in this story, is a complete and utter asshole. He verbally and emotionally abuses me on a daily basis, and unfortunately, now I'm stuck in a situation to where I have no choice but to keep him around, because without my sister's help with this tax situation, it myself and my ex's problem to come up with the money, and that's rough. We now have a car payment, health insurance which is steep for both of us, my meds. I failed to mention that I have health issues of my own stemming from having cancer back in 2015, car insurance, 2 phones, food, etc., and this ever-growing, very expensive pot habit that my ex has that he refuses to cut back on. And since he is horrible with money, I had to start having him send me his paycheck, aside from $75 per check for his pot or whatever, just to make sure the bills got paid. But the problem is, he is a narcissistic liar who loves to do deceitful things, like taking loans out of his paycheck without my knowledge, so that by the time I actually get the money from him, it's sometimes half what it should be. On top of that, he refuses to help out around the house. He is a healthy 50-year-old man who won't do anything at all to help keep the house clean or even mow the lawn every couple weeks. Nothing. He won't even clean his own room. My sister lives in the upstairs of the house and she doesn't help with anything either. Neither of them have physical ailments and I have a bad back, and right now I am hobbling around because I have something wrong with my ankle, and I finally went and got an x-ray but 2 weeks later and I still haven't gotten any results. Supposedly, my doctor hadn't gotten the results even though the radiology lab said they sent it to her 3 times. Ugh! I'm hoping Monday I'll get some sort of results. But anyway, my point being, out of 3 people in this house, the 2 who are the most physically healthy to do chores around here are doing nothing, and I am doing all of it. So much for coming together, right? Because of the fighting between myself and my ex, I was bullied out of the main part of the house. I now live in the room above the garage because otherwise I am yelled at 24/7 by the POS, who lays on the couch 24/7 if he isn't at work. If I, God forbid, mention that it would be nice if he helped out around here, especially considering that for 2 years I took care of him as he came off meth and had no job, I get screamed at that I'm dwelling on the past, then told I'm nothing but a cunt and I should go back upstairs and fuck off. But here's the kicker. My ex sits out on the porch to smoke pot, and my sister decided to also sit out on the porch and smoke pot. And every time they are out there together, they are laughing it up, having a good time, sometimes for hours. And sometimes I have gone out there to get the mail or etc., and if my ex yells at me, my sister says nothing to him. In fact, she has told me that she won't get involved in the issues between him and I, even though I would never involve her and I'd never ask her to get involved. But what I did ask of her, I asked her on the trip in the truck when she moved here. I said this exact thing. Do me a favor, since so-and-so, don't want to name names, is the type to talk about me to others just to try and garner sympathy because he loves to be a victim. Can you please just tell him that you would rather he didn't discuss the problems of mine and his with you because it makes you uncomfortable? And she agreed that is how she'd handle it, and I had nothing to worry about, because she wouldn't allow him to talk crap about me to her. And again, a reminder, he's gay, and that's no secret, so this has zero to do with anything sexual or etc. But all I know, if the tables were turned, and I lived with her and her asshole husband, and he yelled at her constantly, even if I didn't get involved, I certainly wouldn't be sitting on the porch with that asshole smoking pot, having a good ole time. In fact, if it were me, and my sister's husband was yelling at her saying the most god-awful things to her just because she asked for some help around the house, I would immediately tell him right where to go. I'd not be able to stand by and watch him do those things to her. But the bigger issue is, I was wondering why ever since they had been pot buddies out on the porch, I'd say about 3 months and about the same time frame that I've been living above, the garage. Why is he all of a sudden even a worse asshole to me? And after talking to a friend of mine who is a psychologist, she suggested that with him being a narcissist, if he were to be getting some sort of validation from someone, especially my own sister, it may make his ego grow even bigger, enough for him to lash out even more. In other words, if he was confiding in her about things concerning me, regardless of how untrue the scenarios are, if my sister were to give him any indication that she agrees with him, that would fuel a narcissist to double down on his arguments. With me, because now he has his victim's own sister giving him some ammo. So, about a week ago, I had to take my sister to one of her doctor's appointments, and in the 1-hour drive home, I tried to gently explain to her that her hanging out with him on the porch is causing me stress because somewhere he is taking your being nice to him as being complicit to how he treats me. I didn't mention nor accuse her of potentially allowing him to talk about me and her possibly agreeing with him. I just asked her to maybe not utilize him as a pot buddy, because it was causing some stress for me because ever since this has been going on, he has been treating me way worse and that I really don't like having to live above the garage in my own house. Well, she got defensive, which I thought was a strange reaction, and immediately the whole thing became about her, that she has no friends and how she needs someone to talk to and it's the only time she gets outside. To say the least, I was dumbfounded. So I repeated to her, "Okay, but your need for a friend is coming at my expense. I've had to move over the garage because of it. Because otherwise I am berated and dehumanized by him, and I'm sorry, but just because I don't smoke pot doesn't mean you can come and talk to me. I am your sister after all, and all he is some asshole who mooched off me for years and now causes me great stress and has caused me to become very depressed to the point that I go to sleep every night wishing I would just not wake up. Is that worth it all to you just for a pot buddy?" She agreed to cut back on hanging out with him, and that was the end of that. I still felt some kind of way about that, putting myself in her shoes. I would be very concerned for my sister's well-being, and if my friendship with her ex, no matter how innocent, was causing her any stress, it would be over. No need for any explanations. So over the next week, I didn't notice her cutting back on her interactions, so I did an asshole thing. I put a small recording device outside and recorded what was being said. And just as I thought, when my ex said something about me, in which he of course lied about the situation, she would chime in. For example, and I'm only going to give one example even though there is more than one, including one where the ex said something derogatory about me and my sister, thought it was okay to laugh along with him. One of the conversations was about how one Friday, I called him because it was getting late and I was wondering where he was, and he said he was at the dispensary. I got mad because he had been taking out these loans from his paycheck, and they get taken out every payday, reducing his pay significantly because there is interest tacked onto them. And his pot smoking is so out of hand because he smokes pot, like it's a cigarette. I leave him with $75 every paycheck for his pot, and if he needs more than that, he is going to have to learn to cope, because trying to save money for the taxes is almost impossible with all this going on. I work, but due to my health issues, I am limited, so even though I have my own business, I only make about $300, $500 a week. But anyway, what he told my sister was that I take all his money and he doesn't know where it gets spent. That's a lie. He knows exactly what it's spent on down to the penny. And I don't even leave him a dime of it for himself. To which he proceeds to tell my sister, "Don't you think I should be entitled to like even $50 of my own check?" And my sister, of course, agreed and seemed appalled that I would not give him anything from his own paycheck. And the kicker is, weeks earlier I told her that he had been taking out these loans which are upwards of $300 to $500 per month, but all in smaller increments. So he might take out 100 here or 50 there, use them to eat out every day and buy a lot of pot. And on top of that coming out of his pay, I'm leaving him another $75. And I wouldn't have even thought about recording the conversation at all if it weren't for my ex's big mouth. During more than one argument with him, he would say things like, "And I'm not the only person in the house who agrees with me. So unless he is having two-way conversations with the damn dogs, there is only one other person in the fucking house." But I know. He likes to lie like a rug. And I wasn't about to accuse anyone of anything without proof because somehow, regardless of having some truly fucked up parents, I don't believe in accusing someone without proof. So that's why I felt I had to know what was going on first. Hand. So that's the first AITA question. Am I the asshole for recording one of their porch pot sessions given the context of the situation? The next AITA questions comes from this. So I had yet another argument with the ex a few days later. I still had not revealed that I had taped their conversation. And as most of them do, I'm left in tears, but this time he was even more vicious than normal. I immediately texted my sister and told her about what he said and how I felt, and that I needed my ex to move out, ASAP, and that it looks like I'm going to have to sell the house because I can't possibly get out of this tax situation with the ex sabotaging my every plan, just to be an asshole and with her not wanting to help with the taxes. And she responded to me that I should have discussed this with her before I decided any of this, to which I replied, "This is the discussion." But honestly, I don't feel I need to discuss anything with her, especially when she views everything that happens in this house as not her responsibility. And that's what I told her. Instead of her being concerned for me in the least, she was worried about whether I discussed this with her first. WTF kind of response is that? How come it seems like every time I need some sisterly compassion, she somehow makes it about her? So I finally told her how I felt, without trying to be overly nice about it. I told her that she claims she doesn't want to get involved between me and my ex, yet it's okay for her to decide to involve herself whenever she feels like it. And that's when she denied getting involved. And man, did that make me mad. I came out and told her that my ex had told me that she had agreed with him regarding something I supposedly did to him, and that he lied. And she came back and said, "Well, if he is a liar, why would you believe him?" And then I did what I like to call the mic drop. I told her, "Well, see, that's exactly what I thought." So I decided it's best for me to hear it from the horse's mouth, which is why I got a small recorder and put it on the porch and recorded you sitting there listening to him bitch about me and then sympathize and agree with him. So why then are you lying to me? And why are you doing the exact thing that I asked you not to do, which is get involved in when he starts talking shit about me, to tell him you don't want to hear it? And of course, after that came a phone call. And I picked up, and she tried to lie to me. She tried to say that I asked her to get involved. Well, I was livid at this point because that was a bold-faced lie. See, when her and her daughter would fight, and my sister would bring her daughter all the way downstairs just so she could have me witness and try and ultimately get me involved in the argument, her daughter would say things like, "Why are you now spinning the story in another direction just because we are in front of her?" Meaning me. And now I know why she said that. My sister thought she could win the argument by completely spinning the entire thing around on me. And when I started yelling at her saying, "I'm not your daughter, and you can't lie your way out of this," she hung up on me. I messaged her about how she better put herself in my shoes and really think about how awful it is to be talked about behind your back, and how would she like it if I had done that to her. She doesn't even like it when her own daughter talks to her ex. How would she like it if I sat there and buddied up with her ex every day? Most times right after her ex dehumanized her right in front of me. And then I went outside, proceeded to smoke pot and laugh it up with that monster. Would that make you feel good? Of course, I got no response. Not for 3 days. Then, on the third day, my sister pulls up in a new used car. I live in the room above the garage, so I see everything. I knew my sister was socking away cash to get a car. It was one of the reasons why I couldn't understand why she wouldn't offer to help with the taxes. Not like she didn't have the money, but instead of rescuing our home that we live in and need, she decided to purchase a car. And this car, based on my calculations, cost her about $10K, and that's lowballing it. It's a 2018 Chevy Equinox, LTZ, in pristine condition. And she doesn't have good credit, so I know she paid cash. She always talked about when she had enough for a car, she would pay cash. Later that day, after never acknowledging anything to do with her lies, she has the balls to message me saying, "I'd love to show you my car today. See what you think of it." Like what? Are you fucking kidding me? Look, I get wanting your own car. And for 6 months she couldn't drive because she was diagnosed with epilepsy from that benzo stunt and her 30 days hospital stay. But I've always taken her anywhere she wanted to go, and we have 2 cars in this house now, since the ex got a car recently, so it wasn't like she couldn't go somewhere when she wanted. But she never goes anywhere anyway. She just stays in her room and watches TV. She has no job, nor will she ever have one. So I'm wondering why buying a car was more important than saving the house we live in. That money could have saved this house and we wouldn't have to move. A move which will be very hard on me physically, since I will have to do all the work on my own. And if she thinks for 1 minute that I am letting her move with me, she is out of her mind. I'm sorry, but you want me to take care of you as you get older, sicker. But you don't ever want to have any responsibility to this home, or to the sister who is the one who took you in and would have absolutely taken care of you and already has taken care of you? Seriously? In what world? So that's the second ATA. Question. Am I an asshole for being pissed that she A, never apologized for talking shit behind my back with my ex, and B, knowing that I was going to lose my home and she had the means to help, but instead she bought a car cash? I hope that fucking car will keep her warm at night, because if she thinks she is coming with me when I move, she has another thing coming. And she has no one else to turn to, so I don't know what she thinks she is doing. But I really need to live alone and stop thinking I can be there for others, because, man, I didn't get screwed once. I got screwed twice here between my ex and my sister. Unless I'm just an asshole. I don't feel I'm the asshole here, but if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. And the general public chiming in on this may help me from going insane. I'm sure there are things I left out, but it was a long story, and I am definitely an asshole for making it so long, so I apologize for that. But if you have questions or need further info, I'll be glad to clear anything up if you are not understanding something. But thank you so much in advance for reading this. Now to the fourth story. Family ghosted me for 2 months when I asked for help. Should I go no contact over this? Super long post warning to elder. I, 35 AF, am one of 5 siblings and was mostly raised by a single mom who honestly did the best she could, but her best was still really harmful and caused lots of childhood traumas: SA, physical and emotional domestic abuse, and drug abuse. I'm a first-gen college grad, worked very hard to get out of bad economic and traumatic situation, regularly help family financially and with literally anything: tech support, listening ear, check-ins, schoolwork, job applications. Family doesn't include me or reciprocate the same energy, effort, or communication I give to them. I've been thinking about going no contact, no response for years, but didn't do it due to being made to feel guilty. Cultural norms of respecting parents, elders, and supporting financially because I got it, but after they did not help with a simple task to regain access to my bank while I'm abroad, and then ghosted me for 2 months, I'm thinking I should reconsider and not subject myself to disappointment. Long context. I am the black sheep of my family. As a kid, I used books to escape from the abuse in my home life. I continued to be bookish and was able to put myself through college and grad school, the first of my entire family to do so. I was forced to grow up early, help raise younger siblings, got a job at 14 to contribute to bills, and continued to be emotionally, financially abused into early adulthood throughout college. I knew I could have a healthier, happier life with some physical distance from family in my shitty hometown, so I moved out of state after grad school and then moved abroad. I started to make good money, travel, and got therapy to work through the traumas and better communicate so I won't have those issues in other relationships. After moving, I still talked to family pretty regularly, often sent loans, or outright paid for bills. I'd ship my siblings' kids' birthday and Christmas gifts that I'd wrapped myself in elaborate character-themed: Paw Patrol, Minions, etc., wrapping papers and bows. I loved doing that, But I started to notice that my siblings would just put their kids on the phone when I'd call and wouldn't talk to me, so I stopped bothering to do it. I was always the one reaching out, and I'd barely get a HBD on social media or some combo of emojis texts for holidays. When they started to become financially stable, they never visited me. They actually traveled to other cities and didn't invite me. Fast forward to October 2022, and I'm living abroad as an expat, and my bank randomly locked my cards. I couldn't do the text verification due to the international number I have. I ask sibling number 1 to help, and they agree, so I call the bank and give them sibling number 1's number to send the verification code. I'm giving sibling updates that the bank send the code, FWD the text, or screenshot it and send it. Siblings number 1 says, okay, then goes ghost and doesn't send me anything. The bank rep is like, ma'am, we need the code, or we'll have to end our session, cancel the card, and ship a new one. Thinking quickly, I ask if I can call back BC. My phone is about to die, and the charger is down in my car. The next day, I'm texting why queries my mom and I share the situation, not able to access my money, running low on groceries and bills are coming due. She surprisingly asks what can she do, so I call her to explain. She agrees, and we set up a time for me to call her that Thursday when she is off work. Thursday rolls around, I video call her, offer the bank on mute, thankfully, from my laptop, and Mom is high drunk AF and is also at the house of the family member that SA'd me as a child. I ask her if this is still a good time, and she gets belligerent saying yes, it's a good time BC, she's having a good time, she deserves to have fun and unwind, etc. The family member abuser grabs the phone from her and starts speaking gibberish to imitate the language of the country I now live. Both are obviously heavily under the influence and of no help, so I just hang up. I then reach out to sibling number 2 for help. At this point, the bank has already canceled the card I have in my possession and shipped a new card out to my US address. I ask sibling number 2 if they can pick up the card and ship it to me abroad. I offer to reimburse the shipping cost, plus gas, for running the errand for me via Cash App. Sibling number 2 agrees. I give them my address, and then I don't hear back at all. I call to check in and no answer. I text and get no response, thinking maybe they're busy with the kids and will get back to me late night after bedtime routines, but no. No text, no call, nothing. I don't hear anything from any of my family member for weeks, then a whole month passes by. Remember, I don't have a working card for my checking account and can't get cash, which is a problem BC. I live in a cash-based country, W's low tech. I try every option to resolve the issue with the bank on the phone, and I'm told a new card is being shipped or I can come in branch. So finally, on November 17th, and about 6 weeks after I initially asked my family for help, I use my emergency credit card to book a flight to the closest US city with a bank location. I go and return in a week's time, so I get back day before Thanksgiving. Still haven't heard from my family, and I don't bother contacting them again because I've called and texted multiple times with no response. Fun fact, sibling number 3 actually vacationed in the country I live in over the summer, you were their spouse, but did not tell me until they were leaving, and it wasn't possible to see them given the time and the location of the hotel they were staying. I later learned it made to look like I didn't make time for them. Ironically, sibling number 3 begins texting me on my Google Voice number on Dec 16th, saying they've been trying to reach me and I need to contact them to let them know I'm okay. Huh? Mind you, I've spoken to friends in the US and locally via text and call through all usual means: WhatsApp, direct call, text, IG, and Goggle Voice. I've been fully reachable, they haven't been. I don't bother to respond BC. I'm really upset and annoyed with the fact that nobody cared enough to see if I was all right for 2 months when they knew that I couldn't buy food or pay bills. Plus, I literally had to take a totally avoidable international flight over this. The next day, they all start to repeatedly text, "Can you let me know you're okay? Tell someone you're okay, please," and so on. I'd have loved to get a text saying, "Hey, do you still need help with the bank thing, or did you figure out your bank issue?" It just feels like all this time has passed, and maybe they feel bad and want me to quell their guilt by just saying, "Yeah, I'm okay, because I'm always okay. I always figure it out. I'm always the go-to." I generally disengage and take breaks when I'm really upset and overwhelmed, so I still didn't respond to any texts, and also because I had a therapy session in 2 days, and I wanted to talk through it, as my therapist first. Also, I figured they didn't respond to me for over 2 months, so they can wait. Plus, I was doing them a favor by restraining myself and not going off like I wanted to. Well, lo and behold, they send the police to my home abroad, right as I'm about to start my virtual therapy session. I am both embarrassed and surprised, because this is the most proactive thing anyone in my family has ever done, especially when it came to me. The police tell me that they've been knocking door to door trying to find me BC. They didn't have an address, but they got a call from foreigners worried and trying to reach me. I've since received messages from my mom recounting our last call, except her version was all about how I hung up on my family when they were just trying to say hi to me. Not that I was drunk and high with your abuser when you called me for help. She has sent more BS messages broadly stating how everyone goes through struggles, you shouldn't let time pass, and how she'll pray for me. I guess I leave you all with 2 questions. How would you respond? Should I go no contact with my family? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more amazing content.